Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host Anthony Faso. We just wrapped up our interview with Joseph Woodbury, who is the CEO and co-founder of Neighbor.com. Anthony, what is a takeaway or two that you had?
Well, I would say I was excited when I first heard about this concept. I wanted to get him on the show because this would be another way to create passive income. But I will say, by listening as he explains some of the additional ways to use it, I'm even more excited because I think that this is just another layer that you can add of way of creating passive income. Like we always talk about, infinite banking is just like your rewards credit card for buying real estate. You're going to buy the asset anyways, but we're just adding one extra step. Well, this is even an add-on to the rewards credit card, where if you have a rental property or even your home property, just a way to create, to be able to rent out a piece of that, all that money is just simply going to go to the bottom line. So I think if you're a real estate investor, this is something you can add on, or even if you're just a homeowner trying to create that passive income, be more than monthly expenses, there's some great stuff on here. What about you, Cam? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. This is kind of the Airbnb of storage. The takeaway that I had was that just on a personal side, you mentioned investors, but personally, right, we're looking at maybe moving. And so some of the properties that I've seen does have the opportunity to create some sort of income. And this would be a really good fit down here in Las Vegas, having some extra space where you could come in and rent that out. I'm glad that we got Joseph on at this time. It really planted a seed in my mind as I kind of look for opportunities moving forward. So again, guys, we had Joseph Woodbury. He's the co-founder, CEO of Neighbor. The platform allows individuals and businesses to rent unused space, such as driveways, garages, vacant lots, as parking and storage. Under his leadership, Neighbor is the first storage provider in history to serve renters in all 50 states with availability across cities, suburbs, and rural areas. Hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Take care.
If you're an investor or want to be an investor and you're looking to create passive income that exceeds your monthly expenses, then this is the podcast for you. Here on the Infinite Wealth Podcast, we combine the philosophies of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, along with Nelson Nash's infinite banking concept. Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host Anthony Faso. And today we are excited because we are joined by Joseph Woodbury. He is the CEO and co-founder of Neighbor.com. Joseph, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Joseph, I got to start. What is Neighbor.com? What's the origination story? Let's cover that, and then we can dive into some of these details.
So Neighbor.com really just came from a pain point we had. It was actually my co-founder that came up with the idea. This was while we were still in college. He and his wife had just gotten married, and about a week after they got married, they flew down to South America to work for a humanitarian org down there. And as you can imagine, you just got married a week ago, and now you're living in South America. You need a place to put your stuff while you're going to be gone. So they called around to a bunch of storage facilities and couldn't find any with any vacancies except one that was a half-hour drive away, and it was going to cost a lot of money. So my co-founder, Preston, he ended up just calling friends and asking if anyone had a garage where he could put his items. He went and stored his items. Fast forward 3 or 4 months later, he comes back from South America, and as he's loading up his items from his friend's garage into his car, he just has the thought, this is such a better experience than one of those storage facilities. I felt so much more peace of mind knowing my items were in a nice, clean garage in a neighborhood I trusted. Plus, I saved a ton of money. There's got to be empty space in every neighborhood in the country. Why hasn't someone built a platform or a marketplace of some kind where you could actually look up what's available in your neighborhood? So that's where the idea came from. Really just solved his own problem and then told me about it. I was like, that is brilliant. I thought all the good marketplace ideas were taken. Self-storage industry is like a $500 billion market. There's clearly needs to be a platform like this in that market.
How competitive is this market? You mentioned kind of self-storage being, $500 billion, but specifically kind of this niche? How big is it? I mean, are there a lot of opportunities? There are a lot of competition there?
I mean, it's not a market many people pay attention to. It's not the sexiest industry. But to put it in context, in the United States, the self-storage industry has now built more storage facilities than we have Starbucks, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King's, Wendy's, Walmart's, Home Depot's, and Costco's combined. So all of those places combined. That's how much, and that's not even the units inside. That's just like a single location, number of locations. So it's this huge industry. The largest company is $50 billion company and only has 6 or 7% market share. That's how big this industry is. So very, and they need more. The industry spends about $5 billion a year just on new construction, and it's not enough. Storage still has an average occupancy of somewhere between 93 to 95%. So these places are totally full, even though they spend $5 billion a year on new construction. So Americans want storage. That's pretty clear.
Well, Joseph, you'd mentioned that being a non-sexy business. We're in the life insurance business, so talk about non-sexy. So a lot of our listeners are kind of open to really thinking outside the box, right? But why should somebody listen to this and be concerned about self-storage?
Well, I mean, yeah, you mentioned there are a lot of industries out there or ideas out there where hey, do this, it can provide you passive income. But it turns out most everything requires a decent amount of work. Even, you look at Uber, DoorDash, Instacart. In order to earn any money, you have to go drive around, essentially. You have to put in work. I mean, it's really just a job where you're getting paid to drive around. Even Airbnb or a rental property, if you buy a rental property, you have to find a tenant, and then you're going to have to service the tenant, maintain the house, and do all the maintenance. Airbnb, the guest comes every night, so you have a new guest every other night, and you got to clean up after them and prepare it for the next guest. A lot of people hire a management company to manage their Airbnb for them. So, there's just not that many passive income opportunities out there. You talked about storage. I mean, storage is like the ultimate passive income. Someone needs to store their camper trailer or their boat or their boxes. They come drop them off, and then they may access those items a few times a year. But all the other months, you're basically doing nothing. You're just getting a direct deposit into your bank account every month without any sort of property maintenance whatsoever.
Well, I know Faso likes the idea of not doing anything and getting paid. Joseph,
That's right.
So let's run with that thought. How is the average person kind of using this platform to generate some revenue, some income?
Well, it's funny. We started out just with homeowners, right? So this was people that had empty space in their garage, an RV pad next to their house, a shed out back that they could rent out. And that was kind of our vision for the company. And we expanded that nationwide. We now have active users in basically every city in the country. We're the only storage company operating in all 50 states in the world. But it's funny how creative people have gotten, and it's been fascinating to watch the different ways different types of people have used this. So shortly after growing the kind of homeowner platform, well, then all these investors started coming on where they may own some rental properties, and now they're adding neighbor to their rental property. And you think about the economics on that. If you own a single family home that you rent out, or a townhome, maybe you earn $2,300 in monthly rent, and the mortgage costs $2,000 in a month. And so you're netting out about $300 a month. Well, many of these, they'll add neighbor, and now they're netting $300 from neighbor. So they just doubled their net cash flow on that property with no additional expense. They didn't have to build out the property or do anything else, but they're doubled their net cash flow. And then you get some of those investors where they do this across a few rental properties, and it's almost like you see a light bulb go off in their head where they're like, wait a second, I'm going to go buy another rental property. If I buy a townhome, it's going to run me $500,000, and I'm going to yield $2,000 in rents or $2,500 in rents, maybe 25, 30K in annual rents. I could Airbnb it, and maybe I'd earn 30 or 40K in annual rents. But if I spent that same $500,000 on an empty lot, in Utah, you can buy an acre or two lot for $500,000. I could rent that out for $100,000 a year on Neighbor. And they just like abandon their rental property strategy altogether and just start buying like dedicated Neighbor properties. So it's really fun to see how people have used it so creatively.
Do you wish you could finance all of your investments with your rewards credit card? Just imagine all the traveling that you could do with those miles.
Well, since they won't accept a credit card for a down payment on a rental property, you can do the next best thing, and you can finance your investments by using the infinite banking concept. And imagine all the traveling you could do with all that tax-free cash flow by just adding one extra step to your investing process.
You can learn more by scheduling a free 15-minute discovery call with Anthony or myself. The link will be in the show notes. And now back to the podcast. Investors are inherently concerned with kind of risk and liability. When you bring kind of that into the idea of having a rental property, what kind of liability are you adding on? What concerns should somebody be worried about?
Yeah. With any marketplace, there's going to be some sort of liability. We're glad we're sitting in a space that doesn't have as much liability as, like, say, a Airbnb, where you literally have a person sleeping there, or Uber. I still can't believe we get in a car with, I fly to Chicago, I show up at the airport, and a complete stranger picks me up, and I get in their car, and I'm like, take me here, and I just trust that they will take me to where I'm asking to go. So I would not want to be running liability for Airbnb or Uber. With Neighbor, the liability threshold's a lot lower. They're storing an item. You're not dealing with people and the safety of people. Instead, they're putting a boat on your driveway, or they're putting boxes. You need to make sure that those are taken care of, but generally the liability is not as big for someone storing their Christmas decorations in your garage. In addition, Neighbor does a lot here. So we provide a $1 million guarantee to our hosts. Essentially covers their liability for running a business. Like if there's a slip and fall on your property, that $1 million guarantee can cover you. We're also the only storage provider in the country that offers up to $50,000 in item protection for our renters if they want to sign up for item protection. So both sides are pretty well covered on our marketplace.
Interesting. Now, you'd mentioned Christmas lights, a boat, and I think you said an RV. What sort of spaces are you renting out?
Well, I'll give you some different examples, and it definitely, you see different things in different markets. Again, common spaces at a home being an RV pad, a garage, a shed. An RV pad is great for storing a boat, storing someone's vehicle while they're off traveling, storing an RV or a camper trailer. I actually rent out my RV pad. I bought this home. I'm never going to have an RV, but it has an RV pad, and so now I make, I pay my utilities every month with what my renter who's storing his camper trailer is paying me every month, and my neighbors all think I own a camper trailer, which is kind of funny.
Well, I'm just curious, like how much are you renting that out for?
So I'm based out of Utah. I rent it out for about $100 a month. And I like to always have a renter in there, so I keep it pretty affordable. I think it's probably good for the CEO of the company to be using the product. But then you go to other places, people rent out big lots if they own property. We have a host up in Oregon. He has a large lot. He's earning about $30,000 a year just renting that out. to a bunch of different vehicles to store it. It's almost like a business for him, and it's pretty meaningful cash flow. You have very small renters. I just heard a story about a girl. She's a student in Boston, going to school out in Boston. She lives in literally a 1-bedroom apartment, but she has a parking space that she doesn't need, so she rents out her parking space and earns income that helps pay the rent on her 1-bedroom apartment while she's in college. We've seen people rent out closets in New York City where space is at such a high premium. So yeah, it's really like everyone, if you're serious about this, it's so accessible. A lot of platforms, if you don't have the capital to buy an Airbnb, or if you don't have the time to drive around for Uber, it's off limits to you as an income strategy. But anyone who's serious about this can probably find some space that they have that could be rented out on our platform. So it's like no one is excluded from our platform.
Is there a sweet spot like kind of on this as far as whether it's a camper or a vehicle or a motorcycle, or is it the size of the lot? Have you seen anything like that, or is it just kind of city specific, New York versus Utah?
So it's definitely going to depend on market, and that's where we can help a lot. We have really good pricing data, and so a space may rent out for $400 or $500 a month in New York that may rent out for $80 a month in Wyoming. Same space, it can all be rented. We have active renters in towns that like the total population is like 1,000 people. So you can rent out space anywhere. It just matters what price you charge. And if it's covered, if it's interior, that comes at a premium. So if you have a garage, garages do extremely well because they can house a vehicle or an item. We're going to help you know how much more to price that at. You can even sign up for our smart pricing tools where you just hand pricing control over to us, and we'll increase or decrease your price as the year goes on and try to earn you the maximum amount you can for your given space. So no, there's not really an optimum. It all depends on the price. We will also help you dice up the space. So it's best to dice up your space into smaller spaces. If you have a lot of space, you shouldn't just list, a massive like 40 by 40 room or list an acre lot all as one space. You should divide that up into individual spaces, and our tools can help you do that.
Now, we've had, short-term rentals in the Airbnb space really blew up, particularly around COVID.
Yeah.
Then a lot of communities started creating some zoning, which sometimes made it difficult in some areas. Are there any concerns or issues with zoning with this?
A lot fewer, and that's primarily for this reason. Cities get very concerned with Airbnb because they feel that it displaces residents, right? People that could live in the city, and it drives up rent prices for their citizens, the members of their community. And so they ban Airbnbs in this attempt to, especially in cities like New York, they ban Airbnbs essentially to drive rent prices down across the city. With our business, there's no displacement. We're working with space that it didn't have a renter in it before, and then some investor bought it and turned it into an Airbnb. It didn't have anything in it before. This is just purely unused space. So there's no displacement. So cities don't really care. It's pretty non-invasive. You should, if you're deciding to become a host, you should check your HOA to make sure they're okay with you doing this. Some cities will have regulations that say you can only have X number of vehicles at a property, so you should make sure not to go above that threshold. But oftentimes that just applies to cars, and so like it's perfectly acceptable. I don't have an RV, so it's perfectly acceptable for me to have an RV on my property. No city in the country is going to care about that for the most part. So it's much less regulated. Really, all the regulation in storage doesn't actually center around what you can store or not store. It centers around what do you do with those items if the renter stops paying. Because
oh, okay.
if anyone's ever run a self-storage facility, you know that you're not allowed to dispose of those items. So that's another big advantage to using Neighbor, is we actually handle all the evictions for you in the very rare event. I mean, I'm telling you, it hardly happens because you're local with these people. So there's a little social capital. Like, they want to keep paying you. They don't want to be that guy. But in the rare situation where someone were to stop paying, one, we still cover the payments to you. So we'll still pay you even though they're not paying us. But the second thing is,
it's just, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's an important piece there. Okay. And I want to make sure everybody listens. So if I'm renting out some space and they stop paying, you guys will make good.
yeah, it's called our host payout guarantee. And we do this in all 50 states, all across the country. So we want our hosts to feel like this is completely passive. This should not feel like a business. They should be able to get some space, snap some photos, fill out some information. We bring them a renter, and they just make money from that renter every month without ever worrying about the things you worry about when you run a business. So we provide that for them. And then we also take care of removing the items from the space. So we get the items auctioned off through self-storage auction, which is regulated by state code, or we get the vehicle towed in accordance with state code. So like, we handle all of that if anything needs to be removed from the space. So you really don't have to worry about hardly anything.
Now, that's similar. Cameron's second favorite TV show is Storage Wars. I mean, the first one is Golden Girls, and I'm not just joking. Like, that's legit. And he admits to it. But Storage Wars is interesting, and I can kind of see like how that happens with those goods.
And we run that all online. So it's not like the TV show where people are coming to your space. Instead, we will auction the items off online, and then whoever wins the auction, they'll just show up and collect the items and take them away, and you'll never hear about it again. It's pretty simple.
How long are these this month to month when you do a lease, or are you doing a term?
It's all month to month, which our users love as well. The hosts, if they ever need the space back, they just need to give 30 days notice. The renters, they can move out anytime they'd like. So there's flexibility on both sides. And people like that going in. It turns out that people that are going to store stuff, they actually stay a very long time. And so it's like, once you get that first renter, you're just going to earn passive income for 6, 12, 24, 36. I mean, we've had renters with us for 5+ years before.
What's my obligation? So let's say I'm renting out an area in my garage or my backyard. Can they just come over whenever they want, or are there some restrictions on when that person can come access their stuff?
It's all customizable. So when you're signing up your space, it takes about 10 minutes to go through the flow. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions. In addition to like, how do you want to price it and where's it at, and upload photos, we're going to ask you questions like, how frequently can they access it? And you can choose from different options like 24/7 access if you want to be really competitive and charge a higher price, or by appointment only, where they have to set an appointment with you to even come by, or business hours only, or after hours only. We have a bunch of different access options. You can set access frequently, that are kind of guidelines on like, you can come, every day, or you can come once a week, or, you should really only be coming once a month, or something like that, or even fewer. So you can give all sorts of guidelines. Those are displayed to the renter before they book your space, so they are fully aware of your expectations when they book your space.
Now, I was meeting with a client earlier today, and they had bought 15 acres in Washington, and then I thought, well, Neighbor, 15 acres. I can't even. That thing's huge. I got to imagine that they have some space that they could rent. And I went to your website. Very easy to use to find an area, and I like you can put the category of, do you want, is it a boat, RV, or kind of something like that? It's very user friendly. But what I noticed when I put in her zip code, there weren't any options available. And I did the same because eventually I want to have a cabin. And I'm thinking, well, man, it'd be cool to rent out some of that space. And I was looking in Duck Creek, Utah, around that southern area. But neither one had any active listings in there. Is that an opportunity that maybe somebody in that area could become the first neighbor, or how does that work if you have a property in an area that's not being currently rented?
Yeah, it's absolutely an opportunity, and I'd pair that with, as I mentioned, we have active renters in almost every city in the country, which means that if you find an area where you're not seeing any properties on the map, what that means is likely that all of those properties are reserved, because they don't show up on the map when they're reserved because they're not available anymore. So they're not available to a searcher. And so there's a couple indications there. Like, one, just in and of itself, that would scream opportunity in that there's clearly not a ton of available listings, so you're going to be featured prominently. But the second thing is it's likely an indicator that all the ones that did exist there got booked very quickly because they're close to a Duck Creek or something like that, which is a destination where a lot of people are going to want to store their RV or something like that. And so that's an even stronger indication that it's a great opportunity to list.
Okay, well, let's say I had some land in Duck Creek. Is there a way that I could find out what the ranges are to be able to rent something in there?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, we have this very, very cool tool, particularly for outdoor spaces. It's called Blueprint. And I can send you a link if you want to post it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But you can pull up a satellite view of any property in the United States. So you can type in the address, it'll zoom in straight to your lot, your acre lot, or your 15 acres. And then you can use our tool to design essentially a vehicle storage lot, and put some 10 by 50s over here for RVs and some 10 by 20s over here for vehicles or boats. And you can design it, and it's all to scale. So it's perfectly to scale to where you can pick the dimensions of the parking spaces, and it'll map it on the satellite view perfectly. And you'll see a little earnings calculator on the side that, as you adjust the number of spaces you want to allow, it uses local pricing data to give you an estimate of how much you could expect to earn on an annual basis from your property. You don't even have to create an account for this. Like, you can literally just go do this on the site and just play around with it. Investors use it to identify properties they want to buy to list on Neighbor.
Joseph, would you say that would be maybe somebody's first step, would be going to check out the Blueprint, or what would you recommend if somebody's listening and they're like, man, you know what? I think I've got a space available. What should they do next?
So you can just go to neighbor.com/host, and our flow will walk you through. And if you answer a few questions about like what type of property you have, if you have a large like vacant lot, we'll redirect you to that Blueprint tool so that you can use it to design your lot. If you would just have a garage in your home, we'll take you through that flow. So we have essentially a customized flow for whatever property you have. And if you just start from that main entry point, you can also just go to the main website, neighbor.com, and up in the top right corner, you can click list a space, and it'll take you right through that flow where, depending on what type of space, we'll ask you the relevant questions to that space and help you get it listed. Takes, like I said, takes 10 to 15 minutes tops.
Love it. Joseph, is there anything else that you'd like to share, kind of in parting with our listeners?
No, just that it's if you're listening to this and thinking, this sounds like a really interesting idea, sounds like great passive income, I don't know if it's for me or not, just play around with it. We've tried to make it as accessible as possible to where you can just type in your space and you can look whether it's valuable. I think a lot of people self-eliminate. They say, like this student, she could have self-eliminated and said, oh, I'm a student, I have a 1-bedroom apartment, I probably can't rent out space on Neighbor. But she tried it out. She was able to find a way to monetize her space, and now she's paying her rent in Boston. So many individuals have said, I wasn't sure if I could use my space or if anyone would even want my space, but I gave it a try, and now it's like my single largest source of side hustle income, outpacing everything else that I'm doing. And it takes me 20 minutes a month or 30 minutes a month instead of 5 hours a month or 30 hours a month, like all these other things.
Joseph, I love it. I think that this is going to be received well with our audience, as our audience is used to thinking outside the box, just approaching infinite banking, looking for opportunities. And this one sounds like it's pretty easy, right? If you got some unused space out there and you guys are looking to create some income with it, be sure you guys go check out neighbor.com, and then we'll make sure that we get the link to the blueprint in the show notes as well. Joseph, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, buddy, and go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
If you like this video, I know you're like this one. And if you want to learn how investors use infinite banking to increase their returns and lower their taxes, check this out. And if you have some questions and want to see if infinite banking is for you, hop on a discovery call with us. Link for that will be in the description.